Elon Musk was walking down a busy city street, his thoughts consumed with the tasks ahead. He had just wrapped up a meeting, and his mind was still running through business strategies, technological advancements, and personal goals. The noise of the bustling city and the chatter of passing pedestrians faded into the background as he focused on his next move. Suddenly, a soft voice broke through the noise, calling out to him. "Excuse me, mister." Elon turned around, surprised by the interruption. Standing before him was a small girl, no older than 8, with big, curious brown eyes. Her curly hair bounced around her face as she tugged gently on his jacket. The girl was dressed in a simple, slightly worn-out outfit, and though she seemed hesitant, there was a spark of hope in her eyes. Elon knelt down to her level, trying to hide the surprise he felt. "Yes?" he asked, his voice soft but curious. The little girl looked up at him, her voice trembling just a little. "Are you my dad?" she asked quietly, her words hanging in the air. The question took Elon completely off guard. Of all the things he expected to hear on that busy street, this was certainly not one of them. He paused, trying to process what the girl had just asked. He wasn't sure how to respond at first. He had children of his own, but this child clearly wasn't one of them. He looked into her eyes, trying to gauge her feelings. "I'm not your dad," Elon said gently, his tone calm, trying to ease the confusion. He waited a moment, trying to figure out how to explain it in a way that wouldn't hurt her. "But why do you think I am?" he asked, genuinely curious. The little girl hesitated for a moment, her gaze shifting to the ground. She seemed like she was about to say something, but then stopped herself, clearly unsure of how to express her thoughts. After a pause, she looked up at him again, and her voice grew softer, almost whispering. "My mom told me that one day my dad would come back for me," she said, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and uncertainty. "And when I saw you, I thought maybe it was you." Elon felt a strange pull in his chest. The words, though simple, carried so much weight. He could tell the girl was struggling with something deep, something she couldn't fully understand yet. Her innocent belief that maybe, just maybe, this man who stood before her could be the father she longed for, made Elon's heart ache. He glanced at her, feeling a rush of compassion for the little girl. She wasn't just asking a simple question, she was clinging to the hope that her life could change. But how could he explain to her that he wasn't the person she was waiting for? Elon straightened up, gently brushing off his suit jacket. "I'm sorry, but I'm not the one you're looking for," he said softly. "But I think I can help you find your mom." The girl's face fell for a moment, the glimmer of hope in her eyes dimming just a little. She seemed lost in her thoughts, unsure of what to do next. But then, without saying anything, she pointed toward a small coffee shop across the street. Elon followed her gaze and noticed a woman sitting alone inside. She looked tired, as though the weight of the world was resting on her shoulders. Her hands tightly gripped a coffee cup, as if it were the only thing keeping her from falling apart. Elon could sense that something wasn't right, but he didn't press. He simply nodded toward the girl. "Let's go talk to your mom," he suggested, offering her a warm smile as he extended his hand. The little girl hesitated for a moment, her eyes flicking between Elon and her mother in the coffee shop. But after a brief pause, she slowly took his hand, the warmth of his gesture giving her a sense of comfort she had been seeking. Together they crossed the street and entered the coffee shop. Elon, still processing the strange encounter, couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was about to reveal something more than just an innocent misunderstanding. The mother looked up in shock as they walked in. She recognized Elon immediately, her eyes widening with surprise. It wasn't every day that a world-famous entrepreneur would walk into a small coffee shop with her daughter, but her reaction wasn't one of excitement. It was filled with something else, something deeper, Before she could say anything, the little girl ran up to her, excitement in her voice. "Mom, I found Dad!" she exclaimed, her eyes shining with the joy of finding the person she had been waiting for. The mother's face drained of color. Her eyes darted nervously from the girl to Elon. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Elon could see the fear and confusion in her eyes. The situation was far more complicated than he had first imagined. Elon gently approached the woman and sat down at the table, the little girl now sitting beside her. The woman, still in shock, took a deep breath and finally spoke, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry," she said, looking up at him with regret. "It's been a difficult time. I don't know how to explain this." Elon offered a reassuring smile, his demeanor calm and patient. "It's okay, take your time," he said, wanting to make her feel comfortable and not pressured. The last thing he wanted was to add to her anxiety. The little girl, meanwhile, was still looking at him with wide eyes, as if trying to figure out who he was. Her innocent curiosity was almost disarming, but Elon couldn't help but notice the sorrow beneath her gaze, as if she had been waiting for something or someone that wasn't coming back. The woman wiped a tear from her cheek, trying to regain her composure. She paused, clearly struggling with how to start. "It's just, you look so much like him," she said quietly. "My daughter, she thinks you're her father." Elon's expression softened. The mention of the girl's father caught him off guard. "Her father?" he asked gently, trying not to push too much but wanting to understand. The woman nodded, her eyes welling with more tears. He left us, just disappeared. One day he was here and the next, nothing. I don't even know where he is anymore." Her voice cracked as she spoke the last words. "He never said goodbye, never explained, and I had to raise our daughter alone. She's been waiting for him to come back." Elon listened carefully, his heart sinking as he heard the pain in her voice. "How old is she?" he asked, his eyes now shifting toward the little girl. "She's 6, the woman answered, her voice breaking as she looked down at her daughter, who was innocently humming a song, unaware of the gravity of the conversation taking place. "I see," Elon said quietly. The weight of the situation was starting to sink in. This wasn't just about a missed connection or a simple misunderstanding. This was about a broken family, a little girl who had been holding on to the hope that her father would come back, and a mother who had been left to pick up the pieces. "She doesn't understand," the woman continued, wiping her eyes. "She doesn't understand why he's not here, why he hasn't come home. I've tried to explain it, but she refuses to believe me. She still looks for him every day. I don't know what to do anymore." Elon felt a lump form in his throat. He had children of his own, and the thought of them going through something like this was almost unbearable. "That's a heavy burden for both of you," he said softly, "but she's lucky to have you. I'm sure you've done everything you can for her." The woman managed a weak smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I've tried, but sometimes I wonder if it's enough." She hesitated, glancing at Elon with a mixture of hope and fear. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to do this alone anymore." Elon could feel the emotional weight of the situation, and he knew that words alone wouldn't fix things for this woman or her daughter. The loss they had experienced was something far deeper than any brief conversation could heal, but he also knew that sometimes just being there, offering a listening ear or a kind word, could make a world of difference. "What if you didn't have to do it alone?" Elon asked gently. The question was meant to offer reassurance, not as a solution, but as a suggestion that maybe things didn't have to stay this way forever. The woman looked at him, her face torn with uncertainty. "What do you mean?" "I know this must be hard to hear, but maybe Maybe you could start letting people in, Elon said softly. There's a lot of support out there. Friends, family, people who care. You don't have to carry the burden by yourself. Sometimes we don't see the help that's right in front of us. Her eyes welled up with tears once more, but this time she smiled faintly. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. I don't know if I'm ready, she whispered, looking down at her daughter, but I can't keep pretending everything's fine. Maybe I'll try. Elon nodded, understanding. There was no quick fix for the pain she was feeling, no easy answer for the struggle she faced as a mother trying to make sense of the wreckage left by her partner's disappearance. But perhaps, for the first time in a long while, the woman had a glimmer of hope. As the conversation drew to a close, Elon offered a small, understanding smile. Take it one step at a time. You're stronger than you think. The woman nodded, though doubt lingered in her eyes. She knew that words like those would help, but they wouldn't change her reality. She had spent so many sleepless nights wondering what had happened to the man she once loved, why he had chosen to disappear without a trace, leaving her and their daughter to pick up the pieces. There were so many unanswered questions, so many things she would never understand. But for the first time in a while, she felt a small spark of hope. Maybe it wasn't too late to rebuild, to let her daughter see the possibility of something better. As Elon stood up to leave, the little girl, still looking at him with curiosity, tugged at his sleeve. "Are you going to bring my daddy back?" she asked softly, her big eyes wide with innocence. Elon froze. The question was simple, yet its weight was immense. He looked down at the child, her gaze full of unspoken need, longing for a man she had only imagined, a man who might never return. He swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. How could he explain to her that sometimes life didn't give you what you expected, that sometimes people left and didn't come back, and that wasn't her fault? Instead, he bent down to her level, offering a warm smile. "I'm afraid I can't bring your daddy back, little one," he said gently, careful with his words. "But I know he would be proud of you. You're very strong, and your mommy is doing everything she can to take care of you." The little girl looked at him for a long moment, processing his words. Then, with a slow nod, she smiled faintly. It was a small moment of understanding, but in that instant, Elon could see that she was starting to grasp that life wasn't always as simple as waiting for someone to return. The woman watched the exchange quietly, her heart heavy. She had tried so many times to explain to her daughter that her father wasn't coming back, but every time the words never seemed to reach her. Now, seeing Elon's kindness, she wondered if perhaps it wasn't just about words. Maybe it was about time. About the time it took for the wounds to heal, for the truth to settle in, and for a new sense of hope to take root. As the two of them left, the woman sat for a moment, lost in thought. There was something about the brief conversation that had shifted something deep within her. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she had a renewed sense of determination. She would keep going, for her daughter, for herself. And maybe, just maybe, things would start to get better. Later that evening, after tucking her daughter into bed, she sat by the window, looking out into the night. The city was quiet, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a small sense of peace. She wasn't alone, she had support, and in time, that would be enough. The days passed slowly, but steadily. The woman continued to balance her work and raising her daughter, struggling to keep everything afloat. But there were moments when the weight of the world seemed too much to bear. She still couldn't stop thinking about the man who had vanished and how his absence had shaped their lives. It seemed impossible to fully heal, to move forward, but she did her best each day. And then, one morning, a knock at the door changed everything. She wasn't expecting anyone. Hesitant, she opened the door, her heart pounding in her chest. To her shock, standing there in front of her was a representative from SpaceX. The message he carried was one she had never expected. Elon Musk himself had taken an interest in her family's story and wanted to help. The representative handed her a letter, sealed with an elegant signature. She opened it with trembling hands, her eyes scanning the words written inside. In that letter, Elon Musk explained that he had been deeply moved by her story and wanted to offer not just his words of encouragement, but his actions. He would personally ensure that her family's financial struggles would be eased, offering a generous donation to cover their living expenses and any debts that had been piling up. But that wasn't all. He also extended an invitation for her to visit SpaceX headquarters, where she could meet with the team and discuss how they could support her in rebuilding her life and future. At first, she couldn't comprehend what she was reading. It felt like something out of a dream. Elon Musk, the man who had revolutionized space travel, was offering to help her family. She had always seen him in the media as a distant figure, a billionaire who seemed out of reach. But now, it felt as though he had truly cared about their struggle. The woman couldn't help but burst into tears. It wasn't just the financial assistance, it was the validation. Someone, especially someone like Musk, had taken the time to listen to her story. She wasn't invisible. She wasn't forgotten. Her daughter, sensing the change in the room, came running from the other room, her eyes wide with curiosity. "What's wrong, Mommy?" Through her tears, the woman smiled and knelt down to her daughter's level. "Everything's going to be okay," she whispered, pulling her into a tight hug. "We're going to be okay." In the following weeks, the woman and her daughter traveled to SpaceX headquarters. The visit was surreal, a chance to witness firsthand the incredible work happening in the world of space exploration. They met with Elon Musk, who was kind, humble, and genuinely interested in hearing more about their story. He shared insights into how technology and innovation could help people facing difficult circumstances and offered her guidance on how to explore new career opportunities. For the first time in a long while, the woman felt a spark of excitement about the future. Elon's gesture wasn't just about money, it was about showing them that they mattered. His support gave the woman not just the means to survive, but the confidence to thrive. And while there was still much to work through, she knew that her life had irrevocably changed. With Elon's help, she found new opportunities for work, allowing her to slowly pay off her debts. She even started her own small business, leveraging her skills and the network she had built. Her daughter, too, flourished. She began to feel a sense of stability that had long eluded them both. Years later, the woman would look back at that moment, when a simple letter from Elon Musk had turned everything around, and realized that it had been the turning point in her life. She had gone from feeling invisible to being seen. She had gone from struggling to survive to thriving, all because one person, a billionaire with a heart for people, decided to make a difference. Elon Musk had changed their lives in ways they never imagined, and in doing so, he had proven that even the smallest acts of kindness could create the biggest ripples in the world. And as her daughter grew older, the woman knew she had done everything possible to give her the best life she could. The future was bright, and no matter what came next, they would face it together, stronger than ever.